sir, and I'm going to use that term, sir, because I use that for respect. Because when we talk about Take Six, we are talking about a group of gentlemen who have revolutionized music, who have taught people the respect of music, respect of vocals, respect of song, and respect of heritage. And what you folks have done over the years of using again the term pure music is definitely respect. And sir, I use that for you and Take Six. Thank you so much for doing this interview with me.
Thank you. My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
You know, a lot of people are really excited. Of course, you folks are going to be part of Sing, the Toronto International Vocal Arts Festival. How does it feel coming back to Toronto and showing the talent that has been going on? What are we looking at here? 40 years are we looking at?
Not quite
Not
40
quite.
professionally. No, I started the group actually over 40 years ago, but professionally since 1987. So what is that? 35 years now?
We're coming close. We are
Yeah,
coming
we're
close
coming
to
close.
40.
Hmm.
Uh, how does it feel coming to Toronto to perform?
Feels amazing. We haven't been to Toronto in a while, and we haven't done pretty much a fully a cappella festival type thing in quite some time. So this is going to be very, very cool. It's like, performing and hanging out with like-minded souls. So it's going to be very, very cool.
And we're so looking forward to this because, you know, the pandemic has been tough on the world. And, you know, when I always think about your music from back in the day to today, it's always brought a sense of comfort.
Hmm.
When you folks first, when you helped organize all this, I mean, what was your goals in the beginning? Because every time I've heard your music, whether it be in a movie soundtrack or just a song that's released, there's always, it's almost like the world could be going to whatever, hear your vocals, hear your music, whether there is music in the background, instruments, or it's just pure a cappella. There's that pause and comfort.
So for us from the very beginning, all that really mattered um, was that we loved the music. I mean, there have been plenty of times, even to this day, where we'll be in rehearsal and we'll give each other goosebumps because of the music. And if that does anything for anybody else, that's an added bonus for us. So I think, especially when I'm talking to people, whether it's an interview or teaching or whatever, I always say, you better love what it is you do because that love actually translates and transfers to the listener. And so for us, that's what it has always, always been.
Let's talk about back in the day because, and again, no absolute, no insult to the artists of today, but I always felt like back in 60s, 70s, 50s you can go into, even before that. But I mean, looking at 70s and 80s, 90s and 60s, where I grew up mostly, um, I always found that artists were really a lot about not just the stories that they were telling, but vocally and how the story was going to be told through their vocal arrangements. Was that the same thing with Take Six? And when they were going to tell their lyrical stories vocally, those the story was going to be told vocally through the way they were going to sing.
Absolutely. For us, most people who know Take Six know us because of the sound, you know? So it's not even so much the lyrics or the lyrical content, although people know us to be pretty much a contemporary Christian band, even though we have elements of jazz and pop and rock and R&B and all that stuff. It's really about the arrangements. So that's how we tell the story um, through the emotions of the arrangements. And that's primarily Mark Kibble, who is our primary arranger. He's the one who's given us that take six sound. And I dare say that, there aren't any other groups who do what it is we do. We're not trying to sound like anybody else. Even our voices all together sound completely different than most other groups who might even be doing the exact same arrangements.
But why does it work then? Why is there a purity? Why is it that you do not hear? We don't hear a mistake. We don't hear a note off. And in fact, you just said you have individuals who sound different, but when you all sing together, you sound like one voice, one soul, one mind, one heart.
Well, first of all, I'll say We do make mistakes from time to time, but it's always important, just like if you are a professional athlete, you practice, 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 practice so that the game looks easy, and I think that's what we've always strived to do is to be as close to perfect as possible, especially in the practicing stage, so that when we get to the performance, hopefully no one sees or hears anything that is out, and then that way all we have to do is perform. We don't have to think about the notes. We don't have to think about the breathing. We don't have to think about all the other things that come with that. It's strictly just performance now. And as a group, bringing all the individuals together to be that one organism.
What was it like though? Again, in the beginning and back then, we're talking about the towards the late '80s, early '90s, when there were a lot of great vocal groups, and I mean a lot of them. What was it like for you folks to be able to carve your niche, to stand out, even though you are talking about Christian jazz and gospel? There was still people were loving the music, and I wanted to make sure because biggest part of me was one of my favorites. It was just one of those jams where you could, whether you were in the backyard barbecuing, whether you were doing the fireplace with the family, or even just a nice drive with the roof off. That song represented so much of just a nice time. What do you folks think that you did to carve your niche when you had so many great vocal groups that were out back then?
I think there were a couple of things that worked for us. One, with six guys and wanting to primarily do six-part harmony, that already set us apart from a lot of the other vocal groups.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the time, you had, even if it was four or five guys, you might be singing three-part harmony, maybe four-part harmony. But with six-part harmony, that gave us already a different sound. Um, and then from there, I think we always wanted to try, whether or not it was an a cappella song or not, we wanted to cover all the bases of music, so that you wouldn't miss the instruments. And even when we had instruments in the songs, like specifically Biggest Part of Me, we still wanted to have elements in there to where you're like, that's take six, And let me give you a story about that song. When I was in high school, I heard that song for the first time from the group Ambrosia.
Yes.
And this was well before I started Take Six. I said to myself, one day I would love to sing that song in my own group, and we ended up doing it.
And we are so blessed that you folks did too. You performed with so many artists, from Whitney Houston to our own Canadian Katie Lang. So many. The list just goes on and on. Who would you say were some of your favorites to, if I can say, duet with? Because really, you guys were one voice; they were another voice.
It's interesting because I think if you were to ask me that question tomorrow, it'd probably be different artists than me answering today because we've done so many, and my favorites change all the time. But I'll take a stab at it today. Um, Interestingly enough, I think Kenny Rogers was an amazing collaboration. Al Jarreau, uh, Ella Fitzgerald,
Oh,
Quincy Jones, Stevie Wonder, um, just to name a few, have all been amazing. And a couple years ago, we did some stuff with Dr. Dre, and that was crazy. Well, just the other
wow.
night, we worked with Billy Porter. You know,
Ah.
so yeah, it's a blessing, man, and everybody brings something different, and we try to always bring as much Take Six flavor to it.
Is it 10 Grammys? Correct me if I'm wrong.
So here's the thing: we for many years have been saying that we have 10 because we've won 10, but the Academy says that we've won 8 because the two others were on collaboration projects
Okay.
where we don't actually have the award ourselves. But I've got 8 over here somewhere.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go with the 10 because I like to fill up the fingers. What was it like
I
to
like
win the first Grammy?
it was surreal because we had just come out with our debut album and we sang on that Grammy Awards telecast and we were nominated for 3 and won 2. So I mean, and literally, we were young enough that three of the guys were still in college. And I think that was like finals week, So they literally had to go to the award ceremony, sing, win the awards, and then go back to school to finish out their exams.
When you look at the artists today, are there one or two artists today that you hear and see on the charts that would say, if we ever needed a take 7 or a take 8, who would you put into that position and why?
Oh man. Well, I mean, there are certainly artists and younger artists that we'd love to work with. I mean, come on, Bruno Mars, Tori Kelly, Ariana Grande, people like that. Um, a collaboration with Lucky Day. There's so many really cool artists out there, and a lot of them, whether or not they're producing themselves or not, have some really cool elements of harmony in a lot of the songs that they're doing. And it's so slick that, a lot of times the general public may not know exactly what's happening, and that's cool. But us old heads who are into harmony are like, oh yeah, so yeah. Like,
is there a chance that a documentary is going to be done on you guys, a movie, documentary, or book? Are we looking at something like that in the future? Because now is the time, I think, that these things need to be done before somebody else who has nothing to do with your history tries to do something.
it's interesting you say that. We've been approached by a couple of companies for that. We want to make sure, though, that it's the right company, because like you said, you want to be able to control your narrative enough that you give as complete a story as possible without too much embellishment on things that may or may not be true.
Mm-hmm.
You understand what I'm saying? Because there's a lot of exposés out there on different groups and stuff, and you'll talk to the artist later on, like, man, I wish I hadn't done that because they wanted to focus on this part of it, which, and I understand we're in the entertainment business and people want the salacious, they want this, they want that. There isn't a lot, if any, of that with us, but we want to tell the right story. So yeah, to answer the question, some of those things are in the works, and now is the time because we literally, like you said, we've been together almost 40 years, and we still like each other. We still feel like there's something we have to say, and we would love to get that out to people in documentary form or movie form.
What about music? New music in 2022?
Yeah, we're working on it now. I can't really go into detail, but some of that may be another collaboration or two with some other really cool artists. The thing about doing new music, especially in Take Six, is we're all so creative and have so many different ideas of what we want to do that sometimes corralling those ideas to make a cohesive thing can take a little bit of time, but we're in the thick of it.
We're okay. Time is good, and especially everything that's been going on. We can chill on that until we get what we want.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime, though, we are going to get you here in Toronto. What is this show going to be like?
It'll be a combination of stuff throughout our entire career, from the very first album up to our most recent album, which is called Iconic. And it's funny because we had so much fun doing that first one, and we were brand new, we were young, we didn't know what we were doing. And we had as much fun, if not more, doing Iconic because all those songs are songs that we grew up listening to. And we voted on to say, we got to have at least 4 to 5 votes for each one of these songs to make the album. So every song on that Iconic album are songs that we truly love. And that's what was really cool. So we're going to have all of that stuff on there, man. And that's the tough thing to do when you're putting together a program. I mean, we've got 35 years and like 18 albums. So it's a lot of stuff.
Can I make one request? Because I always wished you guys did Sideshow. I
Oh,
always I always thought you guys would have been perfect for your version for that song because that's one of my favorites and it's such an iconic song with the high voice and everything else.
mm-hmm.
But I would have loved to have heard the version. So I'm doing a nudge nudge wink wink. Do you think at some point you guys could do that song?
I can't say definitively, but I can tell you this. I grew up listening to that song. It's a beautiful, beautiful song. And it lends itself to a lot of really cool harmony. So it's kind of in there in the sense that it's a kind of song that we would do.
Fantastic. Before we go, there are a lot of, as we said, young, great vocalists who are out there. Um, from the icon to the hopefully future icons, what advice can you give those folks out there who truly want to use what they have and make beautiful sounds and beautiful music?
One of the first things I would say, and I say this to the vocal students that I coach, be authentic in what it is you do. I think a lot of young singers, and I'm guilty of it, we're all guilty of it. You grow up listening to other singers and you start emulating that, and that's cool. But start breaking away from that and finding out what your style is and what is actually authentic to your voice. Because that other artist that you're emulating is already doing that. I think authenticity is key. I also think that you, like I mentioned earlier, you have to love what it is you do, because this business, if you actually crack into it, is going to give you highs and lows. How do you navigate the highs and lows? By loving what it is you do and just keeping moving forward. The other thing I would say is always strive for excellence. Almost 40 years in, there's still things that we're learning. There are things that we're trying to get better at and try to fine tune. There's never a place where you're on the mountaintop and there's nothing else to learn. When you get there or you think you're there, that's when everything starts going down. So I would say those things are at the top of the list of being important.
If you told me back in the day that I'd be doing this interview with you, it'd be one of those, yeah, right kind of moments. But my moment did happen. Thank you so much for the great music back then. Thank you so much for the legacy. Thank you so much for coming to Toronto, because we are so looking forward to you being part of Sing. It's going to be an amazing experience, especially after everything we've been through the pandemic. It's going to be a great festival, and it's going to be great because Take Six is going to be part of this. Thank you so much for the interview.
Thank you. I enjoyed it.